Welcome to Leadership from the Cross with Pastor Scott Thom. This broadcast is devoted to taking your ministry and life to the next level. No matter what the level you are at, let us help advance your leadership skills. Leadership from the Cross is a ministry of Cross Christian Fellowship in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And now, Pastor Scott Thom.
We've been getting more and more feedback from you guys out there, and I love it. Some of you who have joined our Bible college have asked questions. We've got people all around the United States and other countries. It's so amazing the days we live in that you can connect with so many people, and I feel that connection when I'm talking. And I'm just in a studio that we have at our church and alone and talking, but it really is a mentorship and just sharing with you these things. And got an email then this week from a pastor who was asking about priorities, really asking about people. You know, you get stretched thin, especially as the church grows. When it's smaller, it's like a family and you fellowship and have potlucks and hang out. And I remember those days where we would be sitting around at our first building, about 800 square feet. Just when you walked into the front door, you were in the room, man. You were in the sanctuary. And we would hang out, and about 60 some odd people, and they would filter out after the service, but a lot of people would hang out afterwards still anyways. And service would be over at 11:30, and people would still be there at 2:30 talking, sharing, playing songs. And finally we'd be like, look, you know, and I flicked the lights and I said, look, you guys, if you stay any longer, we're going to have to like order pizza and have dinner here type of thing, you know. And it was to kind of encourage them to move along, you know, that it's approaching dinner time for some people. They're like, yeah, let's order pizza. And so we stayed and ordered pizza. And those are the good days. You can kind of do that, but you can't always do that, especially as your ministry begins to grow, whether it's a church or you're doing a ministry in church and it begins to grow. Once you start getting into the double figures, even into the teens, it starts to get hard for most people to disciple everybody. You start getting into 50, 60, and then you're like, man, this is taking up a lot of my time. When you get up there and you pass that century mark, it's near impossible to spend time with all the people who want to spend time with you. And this is the gist of what this pastor has asked. And he said, hey, how do you use your time wisely in a situation like this? And you don't want to upset people or not minister to them because you do love them and that's what you're called to do. So how do you balance it out? And this is really about priorities, dealing with priorities with people. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how do you arrange your plans to include people, not burn out, and then temper your time with the people who don't necessarily need it, but want it, and you would want it, but you just can't do it. And you have this struggle inside, right? Everybody begins to know this. You begin to feel it. You struggle inside. I'm not doing enough. I'm not around enough for the people who really need me. And oh man, I need to go visit this person or I need to go do that, but I have these other priorities and you just can't get around. What do you do? Jeremiah 42:3 says this, that the Lord your God may show us the way in which we should walk and the thing we should do. God can work on our time and show us, but you can't do everything. One thing God won't do is give you extra time. He can help multiply time by making things go faster or more efficient. But time is time. We still only get so many seconds, right? Just 60 seconds per minute, just like everybody else. That's why they say time is money. You can make more time, you can make more money, but you can't make more time. You can exercise that time wisely, but you still get the same amount of time. But now you got more people asking to spend that time with you. What do? You really need to be wise about that. Decide what's truly important in ministry and life and what isn't. Obviously, family is important and they have to have time in there. Church leaders and church leadership, these are things that matter. You're always going to have the poor and the needy with you, and you need to spend time with the Lord. That's obviously priority number one, right? But sometimes we just go so busy, it even cuts in on our study time or our personal time with the Lord, our devotional time, our prayer time. And the busier you get, the less productive you feel. You're doing a lot of things, but not feeling like you're making headway. And that's because most ministers, most pastors, most shepherds are reactive rather than proactive. Because reactive works at first. You can react and you have enough time to do all these other things. But when it grows, you start losing the battle and you have to be proactive. You have priorities on your heart and you feel like, man, I'm never getting to them. You have to begin to then look at those things that are most important overall, where you can spend your time and your energy, your love, your attention. And it comes down to the people who really make things happen in your life. And you really can affect their life. And that's what? Family. And in church or ministry, it's about 20%, sometimes as much as 40%. But normally it's about 20% of the people in your church. They'll do most of the attending, the tithing, most of the work. And these are the people that will benefit most from your time. Now, it doesn't mean you don't give time to other people. You got to be considerate with everybody. And there comes the rub, right? So how do you do that? You need to be able to minister to those people who do the most, and you spend the most time with them because they're also going to help the hurting and the needing people. So spending time with your wife and building her up, spending time with your spouse helps them to minister to the kids if you have to leave or if you're not there as much. Rather than you don't get to spend any time with any of them and they all get drained. They all want to spend time with you and you're missing out. So you got to also think of priorities and who can I benefit and help that are actually going to benefit and help other people. So that means that you have to have a proactive mindset. And most people think that's a to-do list. I'm going to go through, here's my to-do list, and I'm going to get this done. That's not what that means. That really means a stop-doing list. Do you know what that means? That there are certain things as you grow in ministry that you are going to have to stop doing, or even stop doing in your family and in your household. What are the things that you stop doing? Stop doing things that make little difference and are of little significance. These are some of the things that if someone else did them, would it matter? Would it matter to your family? And this is sometimes so hard to do, like family time or whatever. I used to do most of my mechanical work on my cars. It got harder as the cars got more sophisticated and computers and all this other stuff. But I would like to change the oil and do all this stuff. I still enjoy doing and mowing my yard and stuff. It's real small. It's so easy to do. But there are certain things that now I turn over to other people. And I don't like doing it because I'm like, I'm spending this money. But what is more important, money or your family? So it gives me more family time. certain things that you can give up on instead of taking days. Yeah, I could do that. I could change out that radiator. I can go in there and I could fix that. And I could save the family money. And sometimes you have to do it because you don't have the money to cover it. But if you have the money to cover it, don't waste time to save money. I'd rather spend that money to recover that time, because that time with my family is more precious than that maybe $100 I would save on labor. Same thing I had to do for the church. I enjoyed cleaning the carpets, and we moved into the small building, 800 square feet, pretty easy to clean the carpeting, straight shot, move the chairs. It was about just as much time to move the chairs and move stuff out of the way than it was to clean the carpet. But it had to be clean because we fellowshipped. We like to have food in there, and you have kids in there, you get food on the ground, and it just needed cleaning, and I enjoyed it. I'd put on my headphones and I'd go in there and I would just worship and I would clean it, and it was very cathartic to me. It was nice. When we went from that place to our next building, and it was closer to 4,000 square feet instead of 800, it took a lot longer. You couldn't do it in a day if you're going to do it right. And so we began to allow someone else to do it. And that was hard on me. I would still get in there and clean up certain areas or do quick cleanups. But I had to basically give it up as our ministry grew. And now we're at 10,000 square feet. I had to turn it over. And now we have volunteers or staff member do it and clean up. And I just had to and that was hard because I felt like I wasn't a servant and somebody else is doing it. But look, that frees me to spend time on ministry, on study, on my family, on someone else who could be built up, who in the future will minister to dozens or hundreds. So doing that and delegating it was much more practical and proactive. And so there's certain things I go through and say, you know what, now it's time to have this on my stop list, on my to stop list instead of my to do list, because it's time. I have to move over. And so you've got to make those priorities happen. If you don't, then it leaves very few opportunities to do what you're called to do. Moses did this, and it's the famous example of that, but he wouldn't slow down enough to train. Well, if I slow down and I train people, then these people aren't going to have their needs met. Yeah, but if once you get people trained, a whole lot more people are going to have their needs met than not. And so you have to have that kind of attitude. We look at Moses, Jesus, he couldn't spend time personally with everybody in the crowds, 5,000 people, no way. Then he spent some quality time with the 70, much more quality time with the 12, and then very high quality time with the 3 to 4, right? That you see singled out to go, for example, on Mount Transfiguration, or to see the little 12-year-old girl raised from the dead. And you have to say no to certain things. The apostles, they were used to serving. They saw Jesus serve, and they knew about servanthood. They caught the vision, but at certain times, Acts chapter 6, they said, look, we have a higher priority. We have to stick to the word and prayer. We can't help the widows and divvy out food. Not that we don't want to, but look, whether a volunteer gives food to the person or we're giving food to the person, it's not going to make that much of a significant difference. But we spending more time with the Lord and in prayer and in the Word and seeking God's direction for the church will make a big impact, a huge difference, a significant impact. So they had to stop. So what things are important in life that you can do and only you can do? Only the apostles could lead the church, but anybody could hand out food to widows. So divest yourself of those things that other people could do, maybe not as well, but maybe just as well or better than you, and delegate as soon as possible. So look at that list. What things only you could do? Only you are the one who really ministers to your family. Only you can take care of your health. Only you can exercise or spend time with the Lord or lead the ministry that you're called to. Nobody else is called to lead that ministry, but other people can step in and hand out information or do some training or open doors or clean or do whatever. Doesn't mean you're above that, but you've got to be able to give it away. Look, your time should be better invested in discipleship. First is allowing yourself to be discipled with the Word, with the Lord. You're going to have to attend to yourself. Don't allow other people to set your agenda where you go down physically or spiritually or mentally or emotionally. If that's happening, then you're saying yes to too many people, too many things. Now, at times you're going to have that. But if it's happening all the time, no bueno, right? It's not good. So only you can exercise yourself, right? Only you can exercise your faith. Only you can give yourself mental acuity or learning. Only you can sit back and recharge yourself emotionally. Don't let that be stolen from you, because then you're no good to anyone else, even if you are saying yes. Only you can mentor or train or love those people who God put directly underneath you or in your path, starting with your family and then your leaders and then on down. And let me tell you this, though. Don't use this as an excuse to kick back. You should be very, very active. What bothers me sometimes is when leaders say, I'm so active, I'm so busy, you're burning me out or whatever. But you ask them what they're doing at home and they're watching TV, they're really doing nothing. I'm spending time with my family. No, you're not spending time with your family. You're around your family, but you're not engaging your family. You're there popping open a soda drink and you're kicking back and your feet are up and you're zoning out. And you're calling it family time. Don't call that family time. That's time when you actually could be using it for something else. And if you're with family, take that time to use it as family time. And don't lie and say that you're busy when you're not. Don't lie and complain that I'm not getting enough family time when you're not spending quality time with your family. Now, if somebody's saying, hey, I promised my daughter we were going to go to the store. I promised my son I was going to go throw the ball with him. I promised, and I'm not getting that time because I am actually engaged in all these ministry activities and other things. Well, then sure. Yeah. Then you know you need to have more things on your stop list than not. That's good. And sometimes you're going to get thrown into things and your time is hard to manage. But Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not to your own understanding. And in all your ways acknowledge him and he's going to direct your paths. Look, your priorities in life are God. Everything else flows from that. It's not God, family, work, then other things. That's never taught in Scripture. It's always taught, seek God first. And what happens out of that is then allow God to manage your time in family, in these other things. Because sometimes priority is work in order to sustain your family. Sometimes it's family and you put off work, or family and you put off ministry because that's the important thing at the time. And that's what God would require you to do. So it's really upon what's going on in the situation. We'll go into that more at another broadcast. So make priorities in your life every day, the things that you need to say yes to. Plan those things out and be proactive in doing that. 80% of what you do on a daily basis needs to be intentional as opposed to responsive. Let the 20% be responsive. Kind of what I do in my day is the first part of the day, I get up, I have some time of exercise while I've got headphones on and I'm listening to a podcast or the word or something. So I'm getting built up while I'm doing that because it's a mindless activity. You're riding a bike, you're lifting weights, or you're doing whatever. Your mind's not really focused so much on the movements. So I incorporate that as discipling time for myself as well. And then I spend the next time in prayer and in the Word, all my study time for Leadership from the Cross, for No Other Doctrine, for Wednesday night services, Thursday night services, for Bible college, whether I'm teaching 4, 5, 6 times a week. That morning time is my best time. That's when I'm peppy. That's when I'm up. That's when I'm awake. And that's always given to the Lord and to the Word. And I don't let that get interrupted. Rarely. I don't set other appointments during that time unless it's an emergency or unusual. That's the time that I take for the Word and prayer and personal attention. Then I take care of some other business that may come up that maybe need to be done that day that isn't teaching related. And I take that first part and do that. And like I said in the other broadcast, I take 60 to 90 minute sprint times. And I sit and I do that. And I try not to let anything interrupt that time. I don't check email. I don't jump around. Then I get up, I walk around. I make sure that blood is flowing and that I spend a little time with the Lord, just a few seconds or a few minutes, and talk to the Lord, get back at it. And then I answer email and questions, and I do most email and questions and text messaging and things that are not necessarily on my list, but need my attention. I give the last part of the day to do that, to answer calls, to talk with people. Sometimes I'll work in lunches, and we'll get to that in a minute. But that's how you do it. And you can get a ton of things accomplished doing it that way. Look, people are your biggest benefit. Their biggest benefit in ministry. They're also your biggest difficulty. And not necessarily in a bad way. It's cool that people want to spend time with you, and you want to spend time with them most of the time, right? But you just can't. So you've got to set priorities with people. So the people priorities kind of go like this. And this is how I responded to the pastor and kind of let him know, here's the things that I do. As ministry grows, you cannot spend as much time with people. And you especially can't spend it with all the people. And let me, as a side note, this is usually what hinders churches. When they get to about 150 to 250 people, they kind of languish there and tend not to grow. What's the difference between them and then growing farther into a megachurch is usually the limitation of the pastor and sometimes the staff. They can't meet everybody's needs but promise to. And so you've got this influx of people coming in, getting saved, but this kind of influx of people saying, well, we're not really being ministered to. They don't have enough ministries going on. I want more ministries for my kids. And then they move on to the megachurch. And the problem is that the pastor's not taking the time to raise up the leaders to do the stuff that should be increasingly being added to his stop-do list. And you train the people to realize the pastor's not going to be with everybody, that we've got qualified leaders and pastors who can also meet your needs. And as people begin to accept that and their needs are being met, and then you lose less people and you tend to move on. So just a side note there. But this is always a problem. So what do you do? People are calling you, hey, can I meet with you? Can I do that? I've had that this week. I've had 5 people ask to go to lunch on Tuesday, and there's only 3 days left in the week, and I can't do it, and there's a few priorities that are there. So here's what I do. First, set your appointment level. For me, it's about 2 a week. I can see about 2 people a week outside of ministry dedicating about, an hour to each person and helping them. And this is not counseling in the church. This is people who just want to spend time. They want to be with you, a little bit of mentorship, a little bit of encouragement or whatever it is, 2 a week. And no more than that. Sometimes it's only 1 a week. I'm already mentoring a bunch of men, and I have scheduled times for that, and I consider that ministry time. There has to be some time for other people to slide in there, and that's what I do. Now, I make that appointment usually over lunch. Why? Because I'm going to eat lunch anyways. So it is, in a sense, doing 2 things at once. And it doesn't mean you're going to lose your concentration with them. And it also helps that awkward moment when you're talking or you're not really sure what to say, or you need time to think. You can take the next bite, right? And so you're chewing, not being rude, thinking about what you're going to say. Or if there's an awkward moment, and we always have that in conversations where you're not really sure where the conversation is going or what to say, and each party can put some food in their mouth, and then you come up by the time you're finished with that mouthful, you usually have something to say, or now you know where you need to take the conversation, the next direction. Stick to it. When that gets full, push them on to the next week and then to the third week, but don't push it out any farther than that. Why? Because if you book yourself too tight, you're going to have problems. And if you are booked too far in advance, you're going to seem too busy for people. So let's say you're booked up and next week, it's like a Thursday or Friday, you're going to meet with somebody on a Tuesday next week, and a loved one passes away in the church community, and they're going to have their funeral on Tuesday. Well, this gives you a chance to reschedule with that person, and you're only pushing it a week or 2 at the most in the future. And they don't feel like they're being pushed to the back burner. And most people, because you have a funeral or emergency coming up, will accept that. But it's harder to accept if you say, well, the next chance I have to meet with you is 3.5 months from now. They're like, what? I can push it off for a week or 2, but 3.5 months? So most of the time, if you can manage that, then only set it up that far. Some guys like to have it set up much farther out, and I understand. But I still like to have some flexibility in there for emergencies and to get right back to people, because they are a priority to me. I don't want them having to wait months, only days or weeks at the most. So that will help. Second thing you can do is have a time of connecting. Like, we've got more and more pastors going out and planting churches now. And it's important that I do spend time with them. Well, 2 to 3 times a year, we have them get together with us, and we have a dinner at one of the churches, and we can all sit down, and they have me alone. So they can ask questions at the table or aside for a moment and pick my brain or do whatever. And that allows them to have, okay, well, I didn't really need Pastor Scott for like an hour and a half. I just really needed him for 5 minutes. And it's nice to spend time. The rest of the time, it would be nice to spend time with them at lunch and just shooting the breeze. Well, you can accomplish that where you bring them all together. They can benefit from the wisdom of one another, not just mine. And they can get those 5 to 10 minute little conversations out of the way. And it works good. We do this with our church, where we have something we call cross training, where we bring people in about once a year, or depending if we have a growth spurt, then we have it more times after that. But it's where we get the people in, and we have a time of not a full-on dinner, but like pastries or sandwich foods, finger foods, and we get together and I share the vision of the church. It's almost like a membership study or a membership meeting or membership class, but it's not. I really want it to be a membership in the Church of God, the general Church of God. So I cover things like what salvation is and why you should, and then they're actually signing a sheet saying that they're a member of the church because they've accepted either tonight or previously Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior. And that way I also know that if in the future I want to use them for ministry or something like that, that I have a declaration of conversion and of testimony, because you can get people come to church and they've never been saved. So I use that, but we can spend time. I show the direction of the church and they get together. And then through this, it allows us to have a personal connection. They can ask questions and do that. And they feel like they have some, and they get some personal time with the pastor. And you can do this at any level of ministry. So third, then I try to be proactive with the people that I know need me. And those people you can go this next step with, having them right alongside you during ministry. This is what Jesus did. So the 12 were always with him in ministry, especially the 3 to 4. And so if they're right alongside you in ministry, you always have this time of talking and debriefing, and they get to spend personal time with you. So when you are doing your ministry, whatever it is, have somebody with you there, who can watch what's going on, learn how this happens, take them to the wedding or take them to the funeral, take them to the study, or if you're going into the prison or whatever you can do, try to get them to tag along, and they're spending personal time with you, but they're getting high quality training. And you can actually pass some of those things off. If you're doing like a regular study, say you're going to a convalescent center and you've been teaching there for a while and they want you to teach, but your schedule's getting tight. You take this person out there that's a good teacher and they go out there with you for 3 or 4 or 5 times. You can say, look, next time I want you to do a devotion and then I'll teach. Next time I want you to open in prayer, do a devotion, I'll teach. Next time you do the teaching and I'll do the devotion. And then slowly you just pass it off to them and say, you've got this, take it over. Because even though it's significant and important, it's not that significant and important that only you have to do it. Somebody else could do it, and sometimes they can do it even better. So that's about it. Other than just telling people, I'm sorry, I can't meet with you, there's alternatives and ways that you can handle this. If you don't, you will burn out. And you're not helping them, and you're not helping yourself. But they need me, and look, even though they need you, you still can't get to all their needs. So it's better to do it with a plan and be proactive than going at it with the tyranny of the urgent, that whatever comes up, whatever fire is there that you're going to put out by yourself, and you burn out because you're putting out all these fires and you're no good to anyone. So you have to balance that out and realize, man, to get the best and to be good, at least to most people, I've got to set these people priorities. If not, then you start becoming no good to anyone. And that's no good. And we want you to have a fruitful ministry, right? So I hope this helped you. Hope this sets up good lessons for you. And this is, again, some of the teaching that we do in our second module in the Bible College. And so I'd like to encourage you to check out ccfcollege.com and possibly, if God puts it on your heart, enroll, and you can get a lot more than just this. Appreciate you. See you next week.
You have been listening to Leadership from the Cross with Pastor Scott Thom of Cross Christian Fellowship in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Check out Pastor Scott's ministry training school and his other radio show, No Other Doctrine, by visiting our website at crossfellowship.org. That's crossfellowship.org. Also, you can visit our Facebook page at Facebook.com/Leadership from the Cross.